Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 23 playthrough of the Colorado Rockies. We are about midway through the 2054 season. Rockies having a solid year, winning percentage of over 600, 5 games up on the Padres and the Dodgers in the NL West as we try to win a third consecutive World Series championship. As I mentioned, the season's gone fine so far. We've got a winning percentage over 600, but certainly have not been as dominant as last season when we won 113 games. At the end of our last episode, we did make an offer to minor league or international amateur free agent Juan Sanchez, who we think is about the best prospect out there. And we're also thinking about making some trades to improve our team. The goal is obviously to win this season, complete the three-peat in what likely will be our final year as general manager of the Colorado Rockies as we prepare for OOTP 24 in the coming days. But before we get into some potential trades to improve this year's team, do want to check in for viewers on a key member of our first World Championship team with the Rockies in 2052. And that is the formerly great Rogelio Loera, 41-year-old, one of the great pitchers in baseball history, won a Cy Young Award with us in 2052 when we did win the first of hopefully 3 in a row World Series. We let him go after last year when he was coming off of a significant injury, and we had a $36 million team option. And you can see that his career is not going particularly well at this point. He is on his second organization already this year. He signed a $5.5 million contract with Seattle, spent some time in AAA, and then he did get one win in 6 games in the majors, put up a .496 ERA in 16 1/3 innings before the Mariners released him. So he's now moved on to AAA and the Las Vegas Aviators. You can see he's pitched 5 games there, all starts, 7.32 ERA. So with that one win from the Mariners, he is still 3 wins away from 300 for his career, and there's no certainty that he's going to get it at this point. Wonder whether he'll be called up to the majors or not. Certainly doesn't seem to be pitching in a way that he will be. So kind of a sad ending to what was one of the most dominant pitching careers imaginable. And we recently moved on from another one of our longtime pitchers, Juan Vargas, having a brutal year for us at the major league level with an .850 ERA over 42 1/3 innings, and he refused a minor league assignment, so we did just let him go. We actually just officially released him today. We actually took a 2-point hit to fan interest for that. Seems a bit aggressive to me for a player in his late 30s who clearly doesn't have any more, but I guess the fans wanted him around to give up a lot of big runs and a lot of hits and home runs in the thin air of Colorado, apparently. So I do feel like we'd like to add a little help to our pitching staff and potentially still would like to upgrade at catcher, although I talked about in our last episode that at this point Alex Alvarez and Matt Haynow have both had solid years, hitting .270 in the case of our starter Alvarez, .289 in the case of Haynow, the backup, and they're both pretty solid, well above average defensive catchers. But I think that is still an area where if we can figure out a way to get Julio Diaz on board, that could be a potential upgrade for us to make as we get closer to the trade deadline. Right now, there isn't a ton of overwhelming talent available on the trading block, so I'm going to be a little more creative in how I try to hopefully source some talent to ensure that this team can fulfill its destiny as a back-to-back-to-back world champion. So looking for some pitching help, we just did a simple search for pitchers with above average stuff, great movement, and a bit above average control. And perhaps surprisingly, there's only 6 players who meet that criteria in baseball. We already have 3 of them on our team. One of them, Sal Lofton, is recovering from a torn elbow ligament that he suffered late last year when he was a member of our team. Did not pitch particularly well for us after we traded for him, so we won't be trying to pick him up with the injury concerns. The Boston Red Sox are looking for a king's ransom for Jaden Stamper because he technically can still start with that third pitch. So they're looking for a crazy amount from him. But Jorge Maravilla, 36-year-old reliever from the Brewers, seems pretty attainable. Looks like they kind of just want to get his contract off the books. They're not going to give him away for free, but I think we do have a chance of getting him for something relatively reasonable. Got that great movement on his pitches, extreme ground ball tendencies, Iron Man in terms of his injury proneness. Just gives us one more arm in the bullpen that fits our park well, and he certainly does have a profile where if we needed him to start, he could. But if you look at the last pieces of the last 3 seasons he has, when he's been primarily starter, his ERA has been 4.5 to 5.5. When he's been primarily a reliever, his ERAs have been under 3. So I think that's certainly the role that we would intend to bring him on to fill. And we do have a deal together to bring Maravilla on board, which I think makes sense for us. Jorge Chairez, 19-year-old with some potential, is the best, or I don't want to say the best, but he's the most prospecty of the players we're giving up. Other than that, it's kind of some veterans with good personalities. Juan Gonzalez, a second baseman we had in AAA, who's a captain personality. Juan Salas, a pitcher that we had in AAA, who's a captain personality. Andres Gomez, another player in his early 30s, and Dave Osuna, who's in his late 20s. So they got some good personalities, which they apparently valued for their minor league system. And Chairez, who probably isn't going to turn anything, but is a 19-year-old. You never know. At least he's a prospect. Clearly, they were not intending to re-sign Maravilla. So we're going to go ahead and complete that trade, bring Mr. Maravilla on board. And unfortunately, if you've been watching closely, you know that is probably not good news for Javon Williams, who remains on the shuttle back and forth between Colorado and Albuquerque. He's put up a 2.55 ERA in both spots this year. Just kind of feel with his fly ball tendencies and his only average movement that he's not a perfect pitcher for us here in Colorado, and he still has options. So he goes back to AAA, and Maravilla is going to come right into our bullpen. And it looks like he's going to join Arabamge in a setup role for us. Kind of an interesting transition we've had over this year. We've lost some of the left-handed arms that we had in our bullpen. And at this point, although we have 3 left-handed starters, only Elijah Smith, the brilliant youngster, is a lefty among our bullpen arms at this point, which is not optimal, but it is what it is at this point. And we are also going to pull a deal for catcher Julio Diaz, who is someone we've been talking about frequently over the last few years as a target of ours. He's a player that we thought we might have an opportunity to pick when we had the 3rd pick in the draft back in 2050, but you can see that he went second right before we picked Elijah Smith, who we were just talking about. But Diaz is definitely an upgrade offensively for us at catcher. I think particularly hitting in cores, although he hasn't hit incredibly well in his young major league career. He just turned 25 years old. Also very good defensively. the cost for us to get him is not insignificant. We have to give up third baseman Willie Caban. That's fine. He's a middling prospect, 7th-round draft pick from back in 2051. But then we also have to give up starting pitcher Jerry Silva, a soon-to-be 23-year-old who is not going to be a starter because that changeup just doesn't seem like it can develop, but seems like he could be a decent relief pitcher. That said, in my view, decent relief pitchers are close to a dime a dozen. He does throw very hard, triple digits, so I think he has a chance to be pretty effective, although he's definitely struggled in AAA this year in a starting role. But with only a bit above average movement, below average control, neutral ground ball tendencies, and the fact he's just never going to be a starter, I don't think he's a big-time prospect. Adrian Ortega still could be, though. Adrian Ortega is viewed as the number 20 prospect in all of baseball, and he's hitting pretty well in rookie ball this year at the age of 18. We brought him up and he even played there last year at the age of 17. So he's probably due for a promotion to single A anyways. This one certainly hurts a little bit because it looks like he can be a pretty respectable hitter. Definitely could be a second baseman, although in a perfect world I'd prefer that all of those ratings were a little higher. But he's not a, in my view, incredible prospect. I'm a little surprised to see him ranked number 20 in baseball. And we're going to get our catcher, who likely will be the catcher for the Colorado organization, potentially for the next decade if everything works out and he's healthy. And we also upgrade this year as we're trying to win it all. So we're going to go ahead and complete that trade as well. The fans are happy that we brought Mr. Diaz on board. Got a nice little bump in fan interest, which puts us better than we were before we released the lefty reliever Vargas. Unfortunately for our backup catcher Max Haynau, that means that he is going to be going to AAA Albuquerque. Oh, and he refuses to be demoted. So that's not perfect. So I guess we're going to have to figure out a way to trade away Haynau. But we can certainly waive and DFA him right now and then figure that out down the line over the next week or so. But we're going to put Julio Diaz onto the team, and presumably he is going to become our starting catcher. Without a doubt, he's going to become our starting catcher. So right now I'm just going to swap him into where Alvarez is. Interesting that we've got two catchers that are both switch hitters, and I'll adjust otherwise, but I don't want to go right with what Nick Hartman wants for I guess I should go see what he wants for depth charts and lineups. Yeah, he wants Diaz a little higher in the order. Now I'm going to have to tweak a few things in the lineup to get exactly what I want it to look like, because right now Israel Mays is not in the lineup at all. And I do want Mr. Mays as our starting third baseman against righties. And I do want Mr. Mays back as our shortstop against lefties. And with those two trades made, I think it's time for us to start moving along here in the month of July. Obviously, we'll revisit before the end of the month whether there's anyone on the trade market that interests us further. Still have plenty of dry powder, although the trade away of the number 20 prospect in the game, along with the pitcher Silva, definitely hurt us, because I think we had been 9th overall before we made those trades. So definitely have weakened our minor league system with the talent that we gave up to execute those two trades. Primarily the talent we gave up to pick Diaz. I would think that Chairez is the only one who may have registered as far as a prospect among the players that we used in the trade to pick up Maravilla. So we've definitely weakened the minor league system a bit with these trades that we made today and also over the past couple of years. But as I mentioned, we are trying to win right now, and that's what we're committed to. And some good news, Juan Sanchez did sign the contract with us, so we got our top pick as far as the international amateur free agents this year. And with a 56-35 record as we get ready for the All-Star break, let's take a look and see how many All-Stars we are going to have this year. Taking a look at the pitching staff, our ace Dave Alvarado, 7-5, but a 5.47 ERA. Think the fact that he was in contention for a Cy Young Award last year when he won 18 games, and he's on a team that's won a couple World Series, probably had a factor with that, because that is a bit of a surprise. Will Lucio out of the bullpen, 4.39 ERA, but he has pitched 55 in a third innings pitch. So feel like may have gotten a little bit of attention just because of winning the World Series last year. Wouldn't have wagered that either of those pitchers was going to be an all-star this season. Turning to the position players, definitely some more representation there. Adam Fields, the DH, and Elijah Moore, the first baseman who leads the National League with 34 homers, both named to the All-Star team. Robbie Carrillo hitting .284 with 25 homers and 57 ribbies in left field makes the team. And right fielder Bobby Perez hitting .308 with 26 home runs and 57 ribbies also makes the team. So 6 Colorado Rockies on the All-Star team here in 2054. And Elijah Moore, who, as I just mentioned, is striving to lead the NL in home runs for a third consecutive season this year, just won the Home Run Derby at the All-Star break. So he continues to be one of the top power hitters in all of baseball, and he's been a cornerstone of our franchise ever since we brought him over in a trade with Seattle almost 4 years ago at this point. And unfortunately, we've got to make a decision on Max Haynow. It's been 7 days since we waived and DFA'd him. He's still refusing the assignment to the minor leagues. It's weird, though, because teams could have just picked him up and nobody did. But yet, when you put him on the trade block, there are players we can get for him. Henry Gonzalez, our former number 1 overall pick with Pittsburgh. Let's take a look at what he's done over the course of his career. He won a Rookie of the Year for us his first year. He was an all-star early in his career. And since then, he's become a bit of a journeyman. He has been a major leaguer for over a decade at this point. 254 doubles, 153 home runs, 110 OPS plus, 112 WRC plus. So he's had a respectable major league career, but certainly not what we expected when we picked him number 1 overall. And honestly, not even what we were expecting when he won a Rookie of the Year and he was named an all-star in each of his first 2 seasons. And those were by far the 2 best seasons of his major league career. And he just never got any better after that, and quite honestly got worse after those first couple of seasons. We're not going to go for Henry Gonzalez, though. Don't fear. We don't need another highly paid outfielder. But I think we are going to go for Marco Marengo, a catcher who's already in AAA. So he does have, he's out of option years, but he actually is already in AAA, so we should be able to get him onto our AAA team. Has decent catcher ability, not a great bat, making some decent money. But at least gives us a body that we can have on our AAA team, since Max Haynow, even though Haynow is definitely better, a little bit better bat, and definitely a much better arm, but Haynow won't accept the assignment to AAA, so Marengo at least gives us a little bit of insurance in the unfortunate event if we do have Mr. Diaz or Mr. Alvarez suffer any injuries over the next few months. And we've made it to the first year player draft where the Rockies are going to be picking last, 36th in the first round. A bunch of compensatory picks, and apparently some pretty significant players were lost last year because 5 of the top 9 picks in the draft are compensatory picks. So a lot of value coming to the Guardians, the Diamondbacks, the Mariners, the Twins, and the Rays for players that they have lost. And we've made it to that 36th pick of ours, and at least on paper, there's a few interesting players out there. Looking at the pitchers, Jose Trevino, we think has got a 4.5-star potential, could have above average stuff, movement, and control. His fastball is close to major league quality right now. He's a 17-year-old who's already throwing in the low to mid 90s. Still has some work to do on a curve and a splitter, and hopefully his change would develop. Looking for a big bonus for where he is in the draft at this point, so that could be why he's still lingering. Not a perfect candidate for Colorado because he doesn't have ground ball tendencies, but still certainly looks like he could be a solid major league starter. Tyler Netherly, another starting pitching prospect, incredible movement, like the durability. He's also looking for a lot of money. He's older, he's over 19 at this point. Another guy who, if the fastball, sinker, and change all develop, he's got major league starting skills, but that change can be unpredictable, and it doesn't look like his curve is going to be quite good enough for the majors. So the question with him is whether he's really a starter at the major league level or not. Ryan Simmons, another starting prospect, guy who looks like he could have a pretty solid 3-pitch arsenal. Plus stuff, movement and control, extreme fly ball tendencies, looking for $7.5 million. I like Trevino better than either of those guys. Jose Vasquez, another starting pitching prospect, looks like he could have a 4 or 5 pitch arsenal if everything goes well. Really nasty stuff. All these guys looking for pretty decent money, $7.5 to $10.5 million. I like Trevino best of the group, but I don't know that he's a perfect fit for Colorado, so maybe there will be something to do among the batters. And it looks like there are also 4 4-star or higher potential everyday players for us to think about. And obviously we'll go deeper than that away from the video, but we'll just kind of highlight some of the top prospects for viewers before we make our decision. Right fielder Ricky Jones, durable high school player. Looks like he's headed to University of Illinois Springfield. Impossible signing. Certainly looks like he could have a pretty nice bat, but he's clearly looking for a lot of money. Not that great defensively, but certainly a close to special bat. Catcher Jose Funky Cold Medina. Above average defensively, like the durability. He's committed to the University of Albany. Looks like he could be a maybe slightly above average offensive player, at least in terms of his batting ratings. Not a ton of speed. Decent prospect, not that exciting to me. Oscar Pisano, a left fielder. Not looking for much money. Looks like he could be an incredible contact hitter with really good gap power and not going to strike out much. Does seem to have the speed to take advantage of that contact and gap power. He's got a gun in the... it looks like a right fielder, although you'd prefer better range and error ratings. Interesting prospect, not looking for much money. And then Chance Shivers, catcher, committed to the University of Virginia. Impossible to sign, pretty average defensively. Looks like he may have a little bit more interesting of a bat than Jose Medina does, although I like Medina's glove better overall. Again, we're picking 36th in the draft. We're probably not going to see an incredible prospect on our list. See what the scouting director recommends. And he recommends Jose Trevino. Okay, that's interesting because that's probably where I was leaning as well. I'm going to spend some time just kind of digging through the draft more extensively, and I'll let you know what we decide. And there wasn't really anybody out there that looked all that exciting other than the players that we've talked about. So Trevino was kind of where I was leaning. I am going to let our scout, Zane Collins, think that he came up with the recommendation. Going to be paying way over slot for Trevino. Fortunately, we do have a lot of money available at this point in addition to the draft budget that we've put together, but this one signing alone will put us over the draft budget because we weren't expecting to be paying nearly this much for a first rounder. But I think that Dixie Trevino is a pretty interesting prospect as a starting pitcher, so we're going to go ahead and meet his demand here as our first round draft pick in 2054. And it's kind of a weird twist of fate that here at the end of the second round, all four of the everyday players who we thought were the four best in terms of the potential a round ago are still available. Given the monetary situation that we're in, already over our draft budget, and the fact that we are trying to win this year and we could be looking to bring on a little bit of salary later in the month, I think we're going to go with the left fielder Oscar Pisano, simply because his demand is by far the most reasonable. As I mentioned, could be a pretty interesting prospect. Slapping extra base hits all over Colorado if he completely develops. Would love it if he was better defensively, especially with the large expanses to cover in Colorado. But if he completely develops as a hitter, you could almost use him as a DH if we needed to. So I think he's an interesting talent to bring on board. So we're going to go ahead and pick Oscar Pisano here in the second round. And there wasn't really anyone too exciting the rest of the way in the draft, so didn't bother to bore you with the details. We'll get offers out to our other picks. Tony Aguirre in the third round will meet his demand. Jonathan Villarreal in the sixth round will meet his demand also. Might as well just get all of these guys signed, and then we'll know exactly what we're dealing with in terms of money to potentially take on some more contracts if need be as the month moves along before we get to the trade deadline. And we've got about a week and a half to the All-Star, or till the trade deadline at this point. We're past the All-Star break. Only up 4.5 on the Padres and up 6.5 on the Dodgers. So similar position to where we were at the start of the month. Take a quick look at how our two new additions are performing. On the pitching side, Jorge Maravilla has a 1.74 ERA and 10 1/3 innings pitched, although he did pick up the loss in one game. And Julio Diaz, since he came over, hitting just 234 and 47 at-bats, has driven in 6 runs, but has not hit a home run yet, which is a little surprising playing so many games in Colorado, but still only 13 games that he's played at this point, so certainly still a small sample size for the hopefully helpful addition at catcher for us. And as we get close to the end of July and the trade deadline, got a couple of injuries to think about. Less significant, Julio Diaz, our new catcher, strep throat for 4 days. Not the end of the world there. But our center fielder, Eddie Farley, biceps tendonitis, going to be out for 3 weeks. So he'll certainly be going on to the IL. Feel that for a 3-week absence, we've certainly got more than competent people in Hector Rivera and Angel Gomez to fill in for him and get a little more playing time. But we are going to, at this point, start exploring the options available on the trade market, just in case there's something we can do to make this team as strong as possible as we get closer and closer to the playoffs. And with that injury to center fielder Eddie Farley, and the fact that we're all in on winning this year, did find one other trade with the player available on the trade block. The Mets looking to get out from center fielder Tony Coffey's contract. This is a player who is a 2-time Gold Glove winner in center field, Still a very good defensive center fielder, good personality in the clubhouse, Iron Man as far as his injury proneness. And I think, or I don't think, I'm pretty confident that he is a better bat than young Hector Rivera at this point. Not that I'm expecting the injury to Farley to be something that lingers for an extended period of time, but Farley has been on the IL twice last year in his first year with the team, and he's now on the IL for the second time this year. They haven't been hugely serious injuries, and he's still allegedly normal as far as his injury proneness. But if something happens there, I think a more accomplished offensive player who's also still really good defensively in center field could help us out. At the very least, it gives us one more professional bat off the bench for a potential pinch hit at bat down the line in the playoffs. Have to give up starting pitching prospect David Sanchez, was a 6th round pick of ours a year ago. Kind of profiling towards being a reliever, and average-ish reliever at that. He does have the ground ball tendencies that we like, but he's a former 6th round pick who's in rookie ball, who is definitely profiling as a middle reliever at best at the major league level. To be able to get an accomplished center fielder with a decent bat and to get the Mets to keep half of his contract for next year for Sanchez seems like a good deal for us. So we are going to go ahead and make that trade. And we made it to the trade deadline. Wasn't really planning on doing anything, but second baseman Danny Ruiz just had a concussion. Supposedly only going to be out for a week, but a moderate impact on everything for him, and certainly don't want to mess around with a concussion, so we're going to put him on the IL. Feel like we've got enough depth in our infield to be able to handle that. Juan Castillo presumably will go into the lineup as our second baseman. He's in just 230 this year and 165 at-bats as a utility infielder for us. Do have some options down in AAA also. We'll let you know what we decide to do there. So I don't think we necessarily need to make a trade for another infielder as insurance. We still have money to bring on some salary if we do decide to go down that path. Just take a quick look. Last I looked, which was only a few days ago game time, there weren't really any real interesting infielders on the trade block. A couple of good defensive players in Elizalde and Olivo, but they're both out with injuries right now. Jorge Ruiz looks like a pretty miserable defensive player. Yeah, a decent bat, but not the kind of guy we're looking for. Jose Thwaites would be a decent utility guy, but he's wrecked physically. Just don't see him being a difference maker. If this injury to Ruiz was more significant, I might think about doing something, but I'm kind of inclined right now to likely go to AAA for filling that roster spot. And I think we are just going to tap into our farm system. Tony Encarnacion, who was a 3rd round pick in 2048 right before we took over the Rockies, is now a 24-year-old hitting 280 in AAA this year. Looks like probably slightly below average major league bat. He's got the versatility to play second, third, and short. Not particularly proficient at any of those. I'd say third base would look like his natural position. But think for a period of a week or so, or it obviously it'll be 10 days with the fact that Ruiz is on the 10-day IL, think that he could be a nice fill-in to see what he can do at the major league level for a week, week and a half or so. And so although I don't love the fact that we've got a starting second baseman and a starting third baseman on the IL right now as we get to the trade deadline, do feel that we gave ourselves a little bit of insurance with the trade for Coffey. You can see he's hitting 357 and 14 at-bats. He's obviously taken over as the starting center fielder with Farley being gone. We'll see what Encarnacion can do. He's kind of an insurance policy. If we had to have him up as a utility infielder in the playoffs, I think we could certainly do that. Edgar Estrada, another kind of utility infielder who we're kind of turning into a more versatile utility player, was a Rule 5 pick from a couple years ago who we could certainly bring up if we needed. And then pitching wise, in addition to having Javon Williams, there he is. In addition to having Javon Williams down in AAA, we've also got a couple of lefties in Danny Sedano, who's got a 3.46 ERA, and Tony Castillo, who's got a 2.87 ERA down there, who could, potentially fill in for a back end of the bullpen type of role if we do have some injuries with the pitching staff. And I do feel that with guys like Crawford, Atabamge, Colbert, Lucio, Elijah Smith, we've got plenty of guys who we could put into the rotation if we needed to. Right now you can see got 3 guys who are in double-digit victories already. The All-Star Alvarado 9-6, despite that sickly ERA, and Jose Ortega is 7-7. So it doesn't seem like there's any immediate urgency to make a change there. And Chase Crawford has been pretty respectable as our closer this year. 3-5 record, so you don't like the 5 losses, but 23 saves, 2.72 ERA. BABIP is 3.64, so that's a little sickly at this point. But his Sierra is 3.36, ERA plus of 1.79, FIP minus of 51. 2.2 WAR in 49 2/3 innings pitched. He's definitely been pretty respectable, so I don't feel like we need to stress out too much about closer right now, although obviously it's always a stressful situation when your closer is on the mound. But feel like we've got enough insurance policies in the minors for the bullpen and on this roster if we did need to change our starting rotation or change our bullpen down the line. So I think we are going to hold tight with what we have at this point. I don't really think that there's any need to make another move, and I don't necessarily see that there's another great move out there. And so the die is cast. We moved ahead to August 1st, so we are past the trade deadline, so we are going to be trying to win 3 in a row with the roster that we put together at this point. Elijah Moore just won the National League Batter of the Month, 327 average, 13 homers, 27 ribbies. So he's having another outstanding season. You can see he's hit between 300 and 310 each of the 4 years he's been with us. A minimum of 45 homers and 100 ribbies each year, and obviously he's still got another close to 2 months to add to those totals this year. So he has been a big-time offensive player for us, extremely productive. Take a look at where we stand in terms of the team statistics. Obviously, our offense remains excellent, first in the National League in most offensive categories. Runs allowed, we're 9th. Our starters ERA is 6th. Bullpen ERA is 8th. Got the best WAR in the league among pitchers. Our defensive efficiency, however, is bad. Our zone rating is average. Did go 16-10 this past month, so really kind of in line with the way we've been playing all year after that disappointing month of June. Our 69 wins is a little below Pythagorean expectations. Winning percentage at home is 100 points better than it is on the road. So things are certainly looking pretty good for the Rockies. The Padres still hanging in there. They're 5 back, just like they were at the beginning of July. But you can see the Dodgers have fallen back significantly, 2-8 in their last 10. They are now 12.5 back, and they are 4.5 out of a wild card at this point. So 616 winning percentage of ours. We're percentage points ahead of the Braves and the Red Sox for the best record in baseball. Obviously, the goal is to once again clinch home field advantage and hopefully use the home field advantage that we have in Colorado to our advantage in the playoffs. And I promise I won't say advantage any more than I have over the last 10 or 20 seconds. Taking a look at the league leaders, Elijah Moore, as we've talked about, looks well on his way to leading the National League in home runs for a third consecutive season. He has been great, as we talked about, ever since we brought him on board in that big trade with Seattle. He's also tied for second in runs batted in with those 100 ribbies. Adam Fields, the designated hitter, is second in the league in OPS. Israel Mays still has that 17-game hitting streak on the leaderboard, obviously, and nobody among the pitching leaders at this point. So the pitching has definitely taken a step back this year from the complete dominance that we had as a pitching staff last year, despite pitching half our games in Colorado. I'd say last year was an exceptional pitching staff. This year, to be middle of the pack in terms of our ERAs and the runs we've allowed, is a pretty solid performance for Colorado, but it's not as exceptional as what we had last year. So certainly a little concerned that maybe the starting pitching may show some weaknesses in the playoffs, but there were just no real good options on the trade market as far as people who were on the trade block or just who were potentially somebody that we could even try to trade for that were realistic to acquire. And as I was talking about, if we do get to a position where we need to tweak something in the starting rotation, feel like we've got plenty of guys who can do that in our bullpen right now. So we've got a couple weeks left in the season, and at this point we are feeling pretty good about where the Rockies are. Obviously, would love it if we had a double-digit lead in the division or close to double-digit like the White Sox have over the Royals or the Red Sox have over the Orioles, but that is not our reality this year, and we will see how we can do in terms of trying to claim that home field advantage for the playoffs and claim the NL West in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.